Hello, everyone. My name is Fally Masambuka-Kanchewa. I am an assistant professor at Iowa State University, and I focus on agriculture communication. Today, I'll be presenting together with my colleagues on a topic titled International Graduate Students Classroom Experiences in U.S. Agriculture Education and Extension Programs. So now I'll hand over to my colleagues to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shuyang, assistant professor in Ag Communication at Iowa State University.
And I'm Lauren Cline, an assistant professor in agricultural leadership at Oklahoma State University. So when we looked at the literature as we started this study, we found that post-secondary ag programs in the United States do attract many international students. But when we look at our own programs in agricultural education and extension, many of them are still dominated by white males. We also know, and it's recorded in literature, that international students face many challenges, sometimes barriers, and have unique experiences. But little is known about the specific experiences of international students that are in our agriculture education and extension programs here in the United States. To frame and kind of guide us in this study, we looked at critical race theory. And the reason for this is that we know that minority students face discrimination, cultural adaptation, and academic difficulties, oftentimes in higher education programs. And we've looked back at our AEE programs, and it's been mentioned numerous times that retaining diverse students is often a challenge that we have. There's a need to recognize the challenges of diverse students in order to promote diverse participation in our program. And so critical race theory gives us that framework to look at the experiences of international students in our profession.
For this study, we're interested in exploring the international graduate students' experience in our discipline, which includes ag education, ag communication, extension, and leadership. Specifically in this study, we focused on the international graduate students' experience in the classroom. It is part of a larger study exploring a more holistic academic experience of the international students in our program. To fulfill the objectives, we use the explanatory sequential mixed methods. This method starts with a quantitative study, in this case, an online survey, to gain a snapshot of this phenomenon. And then we conducted interviews with a subset of the survey participants to really gain an in-depth understanding and review the stories behind the numbers. For the survey participants, we specifically searched for the current international graduate students and the past international graduate students who graduated after 2016. Because we have such a small group of international student population who are relatively close-knit, we decided to start with snowball sampling by reaching out to those international students we know. And then we asked them to share the survey link with those international students they know in our discipline. We also had a few faculty members who helped distribute the survey with international graduate students in their department. In the end, we obtained 26 international student responses. All of them completed the survey. For the instrument, we adopted instrument from a study published by Cline et al. In 2020. That study looked at the underrepresented women graduate students and faculty members in our discipline. In this study, we looked at the perceptions of the course materials that's relevant to international students. In this construct, we created a 6-item, 7-point Likert type scale index. One of the statement as an example is topics regarding international agriculture were integrated into most of the course materials. Another instrument we included in the survey was the personal experience in the classroom. It is a 10-item, 7-point Likert scale. One of the statements was, most instructors supported me to obtain my academic goal. and we used SPSS for data analysis. At the end of the survey, we asked the respondents' interest in participating in a 1-hour-long interview about the same topic. 19 out of the 26 respondents indicated they're willing to participate in the interview, and we were able to interview 12 out of the 19 participants. And for the interview, we conducted them via Zoom. They're audio recorded, transcribed the verbatim, and we used MaxQDA for analysis. A small group of the participants were native Mandarin speakers, so we were able to allow them to speak their native language for the interview. And those interviews were translated and was confirmed by the participants with the translation. To ensure the validity, we did triangulation with different researchers and also compared the themes from the critical race theory. And we had respondents verification and had done the constant comparison of the themes. And the themes that we're presenting are all reached saturation. As the statement for the researchers, both Dr. Masambuka-Kanchewa and I had the experience as international graduate students in the field. And Dr. Cline's expertise is in the gender equity in higher education and has published articles in our field specifically. And we're all had extensive qualitative and quantitative research experience. Going into the results, our first objective was to describe the international graduate students' perceptions of the course content in the agriculture education and extension programs. The survey results indicated a neutral agreement about these programs provided a global emphasis. An average of 4.18 out of 7 was demonstrated from the results. However, the interview revealed that the course materials were heavily focused on the US context. Students indicated that most of the content was on US and they desire to see a more emphasis on the global level. One of the quote we select here was, when a class primarily uses US examples, especially without a detailed introduction of the background of the history and the system, I feel disengaged and difficult to participate.
So I'll be talking about objective number 2, where we looked at the classroom experiences of these international graduate students. So when they were asked during the survey, the majority of the students really indicated having positive experiences, as shown by the mean of 5.37. And in addition, during the interviews, one of the things that most of the participants talked about was how they feel like when they're being asked about examples from their home countries and also being given opportunities to have follow-up questions, they feel valued and really included in the classroom. So that was one of the things that the students really appreciated when they're given opportunities to provide examples from their own home countries. And the other thing that also happened, regardless of them feeling really good about their classroom interactions, most of the students during the interviews revealed that they felt like they were not heard and that they were invisible. So there were so many courses that really talked about this, but one of the courses that really came up was the whole idea that sometimes when the international students speak in the classroom, they feel like nobody's interested in what they say. And sometimes I feel like the reaction or responses from the classmates, even the professor, sometimes is not as the way it is with the other graduate students. So despite there being really those experiences that are negative, but at the same time positive, in general, the results of this study indicates that the international graduate students are so curious and willing to learn. And for most of them, being in the US is a privilege that they don't take for granted, and they really do everything that it takes to make sure that they're able to excel. And one of the things that came out also was really presence of faculty and staff who support these graduate students. So regardless of where they are, like in this study, we talked to students from all over the US in different universities. In every place, students would always give high regard to those faculty who went out of their way to support them. And one particular example that I think it's worthy for us to mention is some faculty who even allow the students to do the assignments in their language. So there was a specific example about one of the students who had their program for SPSS in their own language. And when they were supposed to submit the assignment, they realized that they had forgotten to change the results section to put it in English. But the professor was so understanding that they supported the student, which left a lot to the students that they really remarked that and they feel like it was really important. So that, in as much as it is a barrier for the student, but at the same time having the professors that are willing to incorporate the students' languages that they're used to speaking makes them feel comfortable and feel supported. So as we move forward, thinking about what we do with this and how does this really help us moving forward and making sure that we understand the needs of the students and also we make them feel included and welcome. One of the things that came out was the idea that international graduate students are not a homogeneous group of people. So sometimes there is a tendency among other faculty that maybe because they worked with somebody from Africa or from Asia or from South America, they tend to use the same approach with another student. So just as all of us are people and we have different personalities, the international students also do have different personalities. So it's important that as faculty, we take time to understand each student individually and not make conclusions based on our experience with other students. And also the other important thing that came out was about trust building. And this trust is not just a matter of telling the student to say, oh, let me know if you need anything. This trust really goes beyond what maybe normally we can do in the classroom. One of the typical example that came about this trust is was about the differences in the culture that some of the students come from. And there was a student who gave an example of a place where they come from that they cannot challenge the student. So in the classroom, even though we encourage the students to speak up, but if they're coming from a culture where speaking up has been followed with negative consequences, it's difficult for the students to express themselves in the classroom. So for them to reach the point where they can speak up even about things that maybe are not going well in the classroom, it requires the faculty to go beyond what maybe they'll normally go with any other student or the domestic student, because these students are coming from a place where there are cultural differences that sometimes they look at the professor as being holding a lot of power. And if maybe they go to them to say, I do not appreciate how this was done, they feel like there'll be some negative consequences with that. So building that trust and making sure that they feel comfortable to talk to you and even share with you their experiences is something that's so critical. And in terms of incorporating global perspectives in the course content, this was something that came out a lot. And most of the students said that, sometimes they feel like they know something, but they cannot really use it. And because they're not given the opportunity to share those experiences. And there were some places where the students even provided examples of areas where they feel like, oh, if I was given a chance, I'll talk about how we do these things in my country, because yes, I've learned about how it's done in the US, but I can't link it to how it's done in my country. So really being able to provide the students with that opportunity where they can share their perspectives in the classroom, not only make them feel that they're included, but also makes them feel that the education is relevant, that when they go to their countries, they can easily apply that rather than just having the US perspective, which makes them to have questions. And with them worrying about how they're going to express themselves, they may not ask questions and they end up leaving maybe without assisting other students also to look at this from different perspectives rather than just focusing on one perspective. And then the other important really finding also that came out from the study and thinking about moving forward with research is about the differences between quantitative research versus quantitative research when it comes to capturing people's experience. If you look at our results from the quantitative study, you could be able to say there's a good picture. It painted a very good picture, there's no problem. But then when we went into the stories, that's when you see that there was a lot more than what the students had provided in the surveys. So that speaks of the power of really trying to have people share their experiences so that we're able to get a clear picture. So a recommendation is to say that as we're doing this research, we should really take into consideration about these experiences and the cultural differences and how people are flexible to share their stories depending on who they're sharing the story with. So moving forward, I would recommend that there'll be more research and that will be focused on really understanding the experiences of international students. Yeah, doing surveys will be important, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we don't just depend on the surveys because the surveys miss out a lot. So maybe doing more mixed methods research to understand what's going on and even explore more of other implications that this study was not able to explore. At this point, I'll say thank you so much for listening to this presentation. I hope you have learned something, or if there's something that is not clear to you, me and my colleagues are ready to take your questions, comments, and also feedback. Thank you so much.